The fairground dust clung to my boots like an old habit I couldn't shake. I'd come to the town fair for the routine, setting up the church booth, nodding at neighbors, feeling the weight of their expectations settle like the late summer sun on my shoulders. But then she walked by. Sophia. Her stride cut through the crowd, confident, like she owned the dry earth underfoot. Our eyes met for a split second, and something shifted inside me. A crack in the foundation I'd built over 20 years of marriage and ranch life. Stability versus this pull. It felt like choosing between the ground I knew and a horizon that whispered my name. I turned away, heart thudding, and headed home to the familiar creak of the porch. But her gaze lingered, heavy as the evening shadows. Mornings started the same on the ranch, before the sun crested the ridge. I'd pull on my worn jeans, the ones frayed at the hems from years of brushing against barbed wire, and head to the barn. The air carried the sharp tang of hay and manure, grounding me in the rhythm I'd known since I was a girl helping my father. Shoveling stalls, the pitchfork heavy in my calloused hands, each load a reminder of what held me steady. The horses nickered softly, their breath warm against the chill, and for those hours, the emptiness inside stayed buried under the work. Tom and I moved through it together, most days. He'd rise early too, his broad back bent over the fence repairs, hammer strikes echoing like distant thunder. We'd share coffee on the porch afterward, black and strong, talking about feed prices or the drought's toll on the pasture. It was comfortable, that shared labor. The way his hand would brush mine passing the mug, the quiet understanding built from raising 2 kids and weathering hard winters. But lately, the distance crept in. Not in words, but in the spaces between them. He'd retreat to the tractor, engine rumbling, and I'd watch the dust trail fade, feeling the bed too wide at night, his snores a wall I couldn't climb. The community pulled at me too. Sundays at church, I'd organize the potlucks, my hands flour-dusted from pies that fed the whole congregation. Women like Mrs. Hargrove would pat my arm, say I was the rock of the place. With my volunteer shifts at the shelter and the way I mended quilts for fundraisers, it was a role I'd stepped into young, after the wedding vows and the first baby's cry, filling the days with purpose. But kneeling in the pews, hymns rising like smoke, I'd feel the weight of it all pressing down, a quiet ache that no prayer seemed to touch. Was this it? The life I'd chosen? Solid as the canyon walls? Then the fair upended everything. I'd been arranging jars of preserves at our booth when Sophia appeared, helping with the setup for the new bookstore in town. She hauled crates with ease, her dark hair tied back, sleeves rolled up to show arms tanned from city hikes or whatever life she'd left behind. Her stride caught me first, purposeful, unhurried, cutting through the chatter of kids chasing balloons and the sizzle of fryers. When she turned, our eyes locked again, longer this time. Her smile was quick, genuine, like she'd seen something in me worth holding on to. I fumbled a jar, the glass clinking against the table, and muttered about the heat. Why her? Why now? I'd buried those questions deep, years ago, after college whispers and a hurried engagement to Tom. The ranch, the family, it filled the gaps, or so I'd told myself. But Sophia felt like the missing piece I'd never named, a shape in the puzzle that suddenly fit too well. Her laugh carried over the crowd as she joked with the vendor next door, light and free, stirring dust in my chest I thought had settled long ago. That night, I avoided the mirror, busied myself with supper, stew simmering, cornbread baking. Tom came in late, tired lines etching his face, and we ate in the lamplight, forks scraping plates. I nodded through his talk of the cattle sale, but my mind wandered back to the fair, to her confident stride. No, I told myself, pushing the bowl away. Focus on the chores tomorrow. The kids' calls from college. Home duties first. Always. The rental house smelled of dust and old pine when I first pushed the door open. Boxes stacked like forgotten promises in the narrow hallway. I'd driven out from the city 2 weeks before, the highway blurring into endless flatlands, chasing a quiet I'd lost somewhere between deadlines and empty dinners. The place was small, a sagging porch, walls papered in faded florals, a kitchen where the faucet dripped like a metronome counting out my reset. I unpacked slowly, folding sweaters into drawers that stuck, hanging a single watercolor of jagged city skylines that looked out of place against the sheer curtains fluttering in the dry wind. This town, with its single stoplight and ranch fences stretching to the horizon, was meant to be a pause. No more late nights scrolling profiles, no more forcing fits with men who talked fast but touched like they were borrowing time. My last one, back in the city, had been Mark. Steady job, easy laugh, the kind of guy who planned weekends at craft breweries. We'd lasted a year, sharing takeout and Netflix, his arm around me during movies, feeling solid but somehow off, like wearing a coat tailored for someone else. The sex was fine, mechanical almost, his hands rough from construction but never quite finding the rhythm I craved. I'd lie there after, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, wondering why it left me hollow. A quiet itch under my skin I couldn't name. Before him there was Alex, then Jordan. Patterns of polite goodbyes, unspoken frustrations bubbling up in arguments over nothing. They fulfilled the checklist. Dates, stability, the nod from friends. But the desires? Those stayed buried, whispers in dreams of softer curves, lingering glances at women in coffee shops I'd dismiss as fatigue. Coming here was supposed to silence them, let the wide skies and slow pace bury whatever restlessness stirred when I was alone. The fair was my first real venture out, volunteering to help the new bookstore get its footing, hauling shelves, sorting paperbacks that smelled of fresh ink and possibility. The air hung heavy with fried dough and livestock musk, kids darting between stalls while adults clustered in knots of familiar chatter. I lugged a crate of novels to the booth, sweat beading on my neck, when I brushed past her. Elena. Our hands touched in the pass, hers steady, calloused from work I could only guess at, mine still soft from office keyboards. She was arranging jars at the church table, her dark hair pulled back, face lined with a quiet strength that hit me like the sudden shade of a canyon wall. Her gaze met mine, unflinching, holding longer than polite. It wasn't flirtation. Not yet. Just a steady pull. Like she'd seen through the city's polish to the raw edges I carried. My energy, always restless, the way I shifted weight from foot to foot amid the crowd, contrasted her rooted calm. She stood there, apron dusted with flour, eyes the color of aged leather, and something in me quieted for a beat. Attraction flickered, unbidden, a warmth low in my gut, the kind I'd ignored in bars and brunches back home. Was it her poise, the way she wiped her hands on her jeans without apology, or the unspoken weight she carried, mirroring my own hidden fractures? Doubt crept in as I stacked books, the crate's edges digging into my palms. This town felt conservative, whispers of church suppers and family legacies thick in the air. Risking isolation for a fleeting feeling? The stares of word spread, the aloneness deeper than the city's anonymity. I'd come for reset, not upheaval. But her image stuck, that brush of skin electric against the fair's noise. I caught her glancing back once, quick as a horse shying from thunder, before she turned to a neighbor's question. Later, as the sun dipped, casting long shadows over the midway, I found her again at the booth's edge, folding tablecloths with precise folds. The crowd thinned, leaving the hum of generators and distant laughter. "Hey," I said, voice casual over the folding chair's scrape. "That was a lot of work. Coffee sometime? I could use a local's take on this place." My heart thudded, testing the waters, the invitation hanging like dust motes in the fading light. She paused, cloth in hand, and I wondered if I'd just cracked open a door neither of us was ready for. I shouldn't have said yes to the coffee, but 2 days after the fair, there I was, pushing through the door of the little diner on Main Street, the bell jingling like a warning. Sophia sat at a corner booth, her sketchbook open, pencil scratching lightly. She looked up, that quick smile breaking across her face, and waved me over. The place smelled of burnt toast and strong brew, booths worn smooth from years of locals leaning in close. I slid in across from her, my hands folding tight around the menu, avoiding her eyes at first. We started safe. She asked about the ridges beyond town, the way the canyon carved deep into the earth after spring floods. I described it haltingly, the red rock glowing at dawn, the wind whistling through scrub oak like a low moan. She nodded, sipping her black coffee, steam curling up between us. No deep dives into lives or losses, just the land, vast and unchanging, a buffer against whatever pulled at the edges of my thoughts. Her voice had a city lilt, softened here, drawing out words like she was tasting the air. I found myself talking more, pointing out trails from my childhood, the hidden springs where water pooled cold and clear. It flowed easy, that talk, like the river after rain. But underneath ran something sharper. After, she suggested a walk along the old trail behind the diner, the one that wound up to the overlook. The ground was still damp from morning mist, mud sucking at our boots with each step. Mine caked thick, the ranch-worn leather heavy, mirroring the mess building inside. Familiar paths turning slick underfoot. Sophia's city shoes fared worse, her steps careful but determined, laughing softly when she slipped once, arm brushing mine to steady. We kept to the edges of personal, her sharing light tales of urban chaos. Crowded subways where strangers pressed too close, rooftop bars with views that made the world feel small. I nodded, revealing bits of ranch life. The endless mending of fences after storms, the ache in my back from hay bales that never lightened. No vulnerability, just facts, like stacking stones to hold back a flood. The trail narrowed at a bend, scrub brushing our legs, and she paused to point out a hawk circling overhead, wings slicing the blue. "Look at that," she said, her hand landing light on my arm, fingers warm through my shirt sleeve. Time stuttered. A jolt shot through me, electric as lightning off the canyon rim, heat blooming where she touched. Her eyes met mine, holding, the air thickening like before a summer storm. I felt seen, raw, the hollow places in my chest stirring under that gaze. Her thumb grazed once, accidental or not, and my breath caught, the world narrowing to that point of contact. I pulled back first, stepping away under pretense of watching the hawk. "Family obligations," I muttered, voice rough, glancing at my watch. "Tom's expecting me for supper prep. Kids might call." The words tumbled out, a shield, as we turned back down the trail, mud flaking off in silence. She didn't push, just nodded, her hand dropping to her side. That night, alone in the kitchen after Tom retreated to the den with his paper, the hollow comfort of our marriage pressed in. The bed we'd shared for decades felt vast, his presence a habit more than a hold. I lay awake, the ceiling beams casting shadows like questions. What if this pull wasn't fleeting? The fair's dust still clung in my mind, Sophia's touch a ghost on my skin, urging me to question the walls I'd built so long ago. The sketchbook lay open on the rickety kitchen table that first evening after the walk, pencil gripped tight in my hand. The rental's single bulb cast a yellow pool over the page, shadows stretching like unanswered questions across the floorboards. I started with her jawline, the way it squared firm under sun-weathered skin, from that brief touch at the fair. Lines flowed hesitant at first, then sure. Her eyes next, dark and steady, holding depths I'd only glimpsed in the trail's mud. The profile took shape, hair falling loose like canyon scrub in wind, and as I shaded the curve of her neck, a longing surfaced, raw and unbidden. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. Her quiet strength mirroring the ache I'd carried from the city, buried under layers of fitting in. The pencil scraped softer now, revealing what the sketch hid. A woman who saw me, truly, in a place where I'd come to vanish. Mark called the next day, his voice crackling over the spotty line, full of plans for a visit, like old times. "Miss you out there in the sticks," he said, laughing easy, the sound of traffic humming behind him. I stood by the window, watching dust devils spin in the empty lot, his words landing flat as dry earth. We'd texted sporadically since I left, him the safety net, familiar as worn boots. But tracing Elena's face the night before had cracked something open. "It's not working," I told him, voice steady despite the knot in my gut. "This distance, it's showing me what I need. Exploration. Real kind. Not us." He paused, surprise edging his tone. But I hung up before explanations tangled us further. The phone clattered to the counter, and for the first time, rejection felt like release. Committing to the pull inside, rather than the patterns that left me hollow. No more suitors, no more checklists. Just this quiet town and the truths it was forcing to the surface. The community barn raise came midweek, a cluster of trucks kicking gravel on the outskirts, hammers ringing like distant bells. I'd volunteered again, needing the motion to shake the restlessness, the way Elena's retreat on the trail lingered like boot prints in soft soil. Folks milled about, passing water jugs and sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, the air thick with sawdust and sweat. I spotted her across the field, nailing beams high on the frame, her flannel shirt tied at the waist, muscles taut under denim. She moved with purpose, each swing precise, the wood thudding home like a heartbeat. I grabbed a ladder, hauling planks up beside her, our shoulders brushing in the narrow space. Dust settled on our skin, mixing with the salt of effort, her breath close enough to feel in the heat. We worked without words at first, rhythm syncing. Pass the nail, hold the board, wipe foreheads on sleeves. The sun beat down, turning the metal roofs to mirrors, but her presence cooled it somehow, a steady anchor amid the clamor of voices below. As the afternoon wore on, the frame rising solid around us, conversation slipped in. "You've got away with this," I said, nodding at the beam she'd just secured, my voice low over the mallet's echo. Quiet strength, like you've carried more than wood. She paused, hammer midair, eyes flicking to mine, guarded but curious. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine tar and earth, and she lowered the tool, leaning against the rail. "Ranch life does that," she replied, wiping her brow, a faint smile cracking her reserve. "Builds calluses inside, too." I probed gently then, words careful as laying shingles. "What keeps you going through the hard parts? The droughts, the endless fixes." Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where ridges folded into blue haze, and silence stretched, heavy as the dust we shook from our clothes. "Duty," she said finally, voice rough. "Family, community. It's what fills the days." But her tone carried an undercurrent, a loneliness peeking through like roots cracking stone. I saw it, the weight she bore alone, the way her hands clenched the rail, knuckles white. "And if duty's all there is?" I asked, softer, the question hanging between us like a loose board. "What if life held more, something that fits the empty spaces?" Her breath hitched, eyes meeting mine sharp, the air thickening with unspoken want. She didn't answer, just hammered once more, the thud resounding deeper than wood. As the sun dipped, casting the half-built barn in gold, she climbed down first, turning to me at the ladder's base. "Dinner tomorrow," she said, voice barely above the settling quiet. "At the ranch. Tom's away, kids too. If you're free." The invitation blurred lines we'd towed all week, pulling me closer to the edge. I nodded, heart thudding like fresh-driven nails, the deepening pull no longer deniable. Tom's truck had barely cleared the driveway before the ranch felt emptier than usual, the engine's rumble fading into the canyon's echo like a promise not kept. He'd left for a cattle auction 2 towns over, kids already settled at their aunt's for the week, space I'd insisted on, telling myself it was for the quiet to mend fences or sort the attic. But truth dug deeper, like roots twisting through cracked soil. Sophia's knock came soft at dusk, her silhouette framed in the porch light, carrying a bottle of wine she'd picked up at the co-op. I let her in, the screen door creaking shut behind us, sealing the evening in a hush broken only by the distant low of cattle. We moved to the kitchen, where I'd set the table. Simple. Checkered cloth, mismatched plates from my mother's set. The oven warmed the air with cornbread's golden crust, steam rising as I sliced it, crumbs scattering like dry leaves. Sophia helped with the salad, her knife rhythmic on the cutting board, chopping tomatoes that bled red juice onto the wood. Lantern light flickered from the hook above, casting shadows that danced across her face, softening the lines of city weariness I'd glimpsed at the barn raise. We sat close, elbows nearly touching. The wine poured deep into jelly jars since the good glasses gathered dust. First bites were quiet. The chicken tender from slow roasting, its juices soaking into the bread that tore warm and soft between my fingers. Her presence filled the room, a counterweight to the void Tom's absence carved wider each year. Meals we'd shared turning rote, his eyes on the clock more than me. Conversation started light, forks pausing over plates. She swirled her wine, the liquid catching the light like creek water at midday. City burnout hit hard, she said, voice low over the clink of glass. Deadlines stacking like storm clouds. Every day a grind that left me hollow. Relationships, too. Men who fit on paper, but never in the quiet moments. I drove out here chasing silence, but it's the people that snag you. Her eyes met mine, steady, the confession hanging like mist in the lantern's glow. I nodded, fork tracing patterns in the remnants of my meal, the weight of routine pressing my chest. This life suffocates slow, I admitted, words scraping out after years locked in. Rant work fills the hours, but it's a cage of my own building. Marriage like a well-worn path, community expectations tying knots I can't untie. Nights alone, the bed vast, wondering if duty's all that's left. The admission settled heavy, her hand reaching across the table, fingers brushing mine, brief as a breeze through cottonwood. Clearing plates led us to the sink, water rushing hot over suds, steam fogging the window above. She dried what I washed, our arms grazing in the narrow space, the air thickening with unspoken heat. I turned to hand her a plate, and she was closer, her breath warm on my cheek, eyes dark in the dim. The world narrowed, the drip of the faucet, the lantern's flicker playing across her lips. She leaned in, slow, her hand rising to my arm, thumb tracing the vein there like mapping a hidden trail. My heart thudded, a wild thing against ribs, pulling me forward until our mouths hovered inches apart, the almost kiss electric, tasting of wine and want before it bloomed. Headlights pierced the dark then. Tom's truck, rumbling up the drive earlier than planned. Gravel crunching under tires like bones under boot. We sprang apart, Sophia stepping back to the counter, me gripping the sink edge, water still running cold now. He burst in moments later, dust-streaked and talking fast about a deal gone south, oblivious to the charged air. Sophia excused herself, polite, slipping out with a nod that promised nothing, leaving me to nod through Tom's recount. The almost moment, burning like embers under ash. Fear crested that night, alone in the bed's cold expanse, visions flooding sharp as canyon flash floods. Losing the home I'd poured decades into, the porch where kids learned to walk, the barn echoing with my father's voice. Family judgment crashing down, whispers in church pews turning to outright shuns, Mrs. Hargrove's pats becoming cold shoulders. The kids' faces twisted in confusion, their stability shattered like dropped jars at the fair. What kind of mother upends it all for a pole she couldn't name till now? Sophia waited somewhere in the quiet town, her signal a silence I wasn't ready to break, tension coiling tighter than wire on a fence post. The journal sat open on the scarred oak table in the rental, pages filling with scrawled lines under the harsh glare of the porch bulb. I bought it at the fair, cheap leather binding that smelled of tannery and new starts, but now it held the weight of unraveling. Town whispers had started, faint at first, like wind through fence slats, calling me that city woman in the co-op line, eyes lingering too long on my plates of sliced bread and coffee grounds. Mrs. Ellis at the post office had leaned in close yesterday, her voice a murmur over stamps, asking if I planned to settle proper or just flit through like a summer storm. Isolation clawed deeper, the kind that echoed in empty rooms, fueling fears of doors closing before I'd even knocked. Here for reset, but the stairs painted me outsider, fragile as a lone cottonwood in drought. Elena's dinner invitation lingered like smoke from the lantern, her almost touch in the kitchen a spark I couldn't douse. But what if pursuing it left me stranded? Echoes of city judgments, but sharper in this tight-knit dust. I needed air, motion to shake the knot in my chest. The next morning, I texted her about a hike. Private, away from prying eyes. The canyon trail that snaked up from the ranch's edge, where views opened vast and unforgiving. She agreed quick, her reply clipped but there. And we met at dawn, her truck idling rough in the gravel pullout. The path climbed steep, scrub oak clawing at our boots, the air crisp with sage and the faint rot of leaf litter. Silence stretched between us, broken only by breaths and the crunch of stone underfoot. At the overlook, the canyon yawned below, red walls layered like old wounds, vast unknowns mirroring the desire twisting in my gut. Deep, pulling, terrifying in its span. We paused on a flat ledge, wind rising sharp off the depths, carrying the distant rush of a hidden stream. I turned to her, heart thudding steady as hammer on beam. "Elena," I said, voice low against the gusts. "That night at dinner, it wasn't just talk. I feel it too, this pull. But we can't pretend anymore." Her eyes met mine, dark pools reflecting the chasm, and I pressed on, words tumbling like loose rock. "Is it worth losing everything for this? The life you've built, the people who see you one way? What happens if we chase what's real?" The question hung, raw as exposed root, the title of our unspoken storm. She hesitated, wind whipping her hair across her face like dark banners in turmoil, strands clinging to sweat-damp skin. Her chest rose quick, heart racing visible under her shirt, a storm approaching and the flush climbing her neck, eyes flickering to the horizon, then back, torn between the known ridge and this edge. The air thickened, charged as thunderheads gathering, her hands clenching at her sides, knuckles pale against the red earth. I stepped closer, not touching, but close enough to feel her warmth cut the chill. "I'll wait," I vowed, voice steady as canyon stone. "As long as it takes. But for me, there's no turning back. I've denied this too long, city masks, safe choices that left me hollow. The truth's here, in this pull between us, and I won't bury it again. Whatever comes, I choose it." Her gaze held mine, unflinching now, the wind howling its approval or warning. She nodded once, sharp, then turned down the trail without a word, boots kicking dust. I watched her go, the canyon swallowing her figure, knowing she'd seek the barn solitude, hay-scented shadows to confront the breaking point we'd both reached. The argument started over nothing, as they always did when the cracks ran deep. Tom came in from the fields that evening, boots tracking mud across the kitchen floor I'd just mopped, the gritty smear like a fresh wound on clean linens. I'd spent the afternoon in the barn, forking hay with strokes that matched the turmoil from the hike, each bale a thud against the silence Sophia's question had left echoing. "Watch where you're stepping," I said, sharper than intended, rag in hand as I knelt to wipe it up. He paused in the doorway, hat still on, his face etched with the day's dust and fatigue. "It's just dirt, Elena. Been tracking it in for 20 years. What's got you wound so tight?" I straightened, the rag twisting in my grip like a rope fraying at the ends. The air between us hung thick, scented with the faint bleach from cleaning and the earth he carried. "It's not just dirt. It's everything piling up. The fences breaking, the bills stacking, you coming home later every night like this place is a stopover." My voice rose, unbidden, the words I'd swallowed for months spilling out like water from a cracked trough. He tossed his hat on the counter, the thud loud in the quiet kitchen, and rubbed his neck, eyes narrowing. "I'm working for us, for the kids' future. You think I like grinding out here? But someone's got to hold it together." His tone bit back, defensive, and I saw it then. The distance we'd let grow, not from fights, but from the slow drift of routines that no longer touched. "Hold what? This marriage feels like another chore, Tom. We move side by side, but we're not together. Not really." The confession landed heavy, his face paling under the stubble, and he turned away, muttering about supper, the crack widening like a fault line after quake. Across town, Sophia wrestled her own storm. The gossip had thickened by morning. whispers trailing her at the co-op where she picked up sketchpad paper and canned goods. Old Mr. Reynolds nodded curt, but his eyes flicked away. And the cashier, a woman from church, rang her up slow, murmuring about folks watching the new ones close. Isolation bit deeper, the rental's walls closing in that afternoon as she paced the creaky floors. Journal open, but pencil idle. Staying for uncertain love? The question gnawed, Elena's hesitation on the overlook replaying like wind through bare branches. Her wind-whipped hair, the storm in her eyes. This town could swallow her whole, leave her adrift with nothing but echoes of what might have been. But leaving meant burying the pull again, the city's hollow lights calling her back to masks she'd shed. She questioned it all, the risk of roots in soil that might reject her, heart thudding against the uncertainty like a calf testing a gate. Midnight found me in the den, the house dark except for the phone's glow on the side table. Tom's snores rumbling from the bedroom like distant thunder I couldn't outrun. Her text had come hours earlier. Simple, urgent, can we talk? I'd waited till the clock ticked past 12, dialing with fingers that trembled against the cool plastic. Sophia, I whispered when she answered, voice low to not wake the ghosts of habit. The line crackled soft, her breath the only sound at first. Then her words, hushed as canyon wind. I can't stop thinking about the overlook, about us. We shared fears then, voices threading through the night like fence wire pulled taut. Mine spilled first, the terror of unraveling the life I'd woven, threads of duty and denial fraying under her touch. I love you, I admitted, the words raw as fresh split wood, heart-pounding visible in the dim lamplight. But the costs, the kids' stability, watching them shatter under this. Their faces at holidays, confused, pulling away. And the faith community, rejection like a door slamming, pews emptying around me. Mrs. Hargrove's judgment turning the quilt circles to ice. She listened, her silence a steady hold, then countered, soft but fierce, vulnerability raw as exposed nerve. I see us building something real, Elena, not duty, but choice. Mornings, sharing coffee on your porch, hands brushing over mugs. Evenings, walking trails where no one's watching. A life where we anchor each other, roots twisting together against the storms. I've lost enough hiding, city nights alone, loves that never fit. This vulnerability, it's ours, earned in the quiet truths we've both chased. Her vision painted vivid, pulling me from the edge, our breaths sinking over the line. Fears exchanged like burdens lightened and sharing. The call ended with dawn's first gray creeping the windows. Decisive night, looming like thunderheads on the ridge. I rose quiet, moving to the dresser where old letters hid in the bottom drawer. Yellowed pages from youth, words of a self suppressed. Packing them into a worn saddlebag, symbolic weight settling on my shoulder, the breaking point neared. Resolve hardening, like cooling iron. Stars pricked the black sky like scattered nails and barn rafters when I pulled up to the ridge overlook, the truck's engine cutting off with a sigh that matched my own. The saddlebag weighed heavy on my shoulder, letters inside a lifetime's buried weight, my hands trembling as I stepped out into the chill wind whipping off the canyon. Sophia waited on the flat ledge, her silhouette sharp against the void, arms crossed tight like she was holding herself together. I'd texted her after the call, words sparse but sure. Meet me here, tonight. Resolve burned low in my gut, steady as embers under ash, pulling me forward despite the quake in my knees. The gravel crunched under my boots, each step echoing the thud of my heart, the air thick with sage and the faint, metallic tang of distant rain. She turned as I approached, eyes catching starlight, searching my face in the dark. No words at first, just the space between us closing, my hand finding hers, fingers lacing rough and real. Her skin was cool, calluses from city sketches meeting my ranch-worn palms, and the tremble passed between us like shared current. I pulled her close, bodies aligning slow, her warmth cutting the night's bite, hips fitting like puzzle edges long separated. Our breaths mingled, ragged, and then the kiss, soft at the edges, deepening to something fierce, commitment pouring wordless through parted lips. Her mouth tasted of salt and resolve, hands clutching my back, pulling me flush as if to anchor against the drop. Time blurred, the canyon's hush wrapping us, tongues tracing promises in the dark, heat building like fire struck from flint. I broke away first, breath hitching, and shrugged off the saddlebag, letting it thud to the earth. "These," I said, voice gravel rough, pulling out the yellowed letters, pages crinkling in the wind like dry leaves. From college, before Tom, before the ranch swallowed me whole. Words to a girl I loved, hidden, denied, folded into drawers like they never happened. I handed them over, her fingers brushing mine, the paper trembling in the gust. "This is me, Sophia. The self I suppressed, buried under duty and whispers that love like ours wasn't for folks like me. Lifelong, this ache, nights staring at beams, wondering what if." She took them gentle, scanning lines by starlight, her face softening in the shadows. "I get it," she murmured, folding them back, eyes lifting to mine, unflinching. "My scars run parallel. City nights denying the pull. Men as shields against what stirred in glances at women across bars. Alex, Mark, they patched the hollow, but never filled it. Denials stacked like unsent sketches. Authenticity always the next horizon I chased, but never claimed." Her hand cupped my cheek, thumb tracing jaw like mapping truth. "Now, I choose it. Us. No more hiding in patterns that break slow." Stakes crashed in then, real as the canyon's edge underfoot. "Tom's note's written," I said, voice steadying, pulling a folded paper from my pocket. Simple words. "I can't pretend anymore. The kids, the home. I'll fight for shares, but this is my truth. Everything shifts tomorrow. Judgment from pews, family lines fraying like old rope. But stepping into the unknown, with you, it's the first breath that feels full." She nodded, pulling me back into embrace, bodies pressing as dawn's first gray edged the ridge, new path unfolding amid doubts that lingered like morning mist. But lighter now, shared. The first weeks blurred into a rhythm of shared labor and quiet unraveling. Tom's note led to tense meetings at the kitchen table, his face drawn under the harsh morning light, paper spread like fault lines between us. He packed a bag one dawn, truck kicking gravel as it left, the echo lingering longer than the dust. The kids called that night, voices cracking over the line, confusion thick as fog rolling off the canyon, questions about why and how that I answered in fragments, promising visits and truths they'd unpack in time. The ranch felt hollow at first, rooms echoing with absence, but Sophia moved in slow, her boxes unpacked in the corners of the barn loft we'd claimed as our space. We worked side by side then, her hands learning the pitchfork's weight, forking hay with strokes that matched mine, sweat tracing paths down our necks in the midday heat. Mornings, we'd mend fences together, wire twisting taut under our grips, her laugh cutting the silence when a post slipped and mud splattered our boots. Evenings built our quiet home, nailing shelves in the spare room for her sketchbooks, the hammer's thud a steady pulse, her fingers brushing mine as we sanded edges smooth. The rental sold quick, her city life folded away like old maps, roots sinking here in the dry soil we'd tilled together. Fallout hit hard, waves crashing against the ridges we called home. Church doors stayed shut at first. Mrs. Hargrove's quilts returned unstitched, her note curt about choices that break fellowship. Whispers followed at the co-op, eyes sliding away when we shopped, the cashier's hands quick on the register, like fleeing touch. Some neighbors drifted, old Mr. Reynolds nodding from afar, his truck slowing but never stopping. Losses carved deep, like wind hollowing canyon walls. The community I'd anchored, fracturing under judgments that felt like barbs in soft hide. But deeper connections formed in the cracks. The shelter director, a quiet woman with her own hidden scars, slipped a pie to the porch one Sunday, her eyes meeting Sophia's with a nod that said more than words. A couple from the fair's edge invited us for coffee, their ranch a mirror of ours. sharing stories of late blooms under the table's scarred wood. Bonds knit tighter with those who stayed, threads of understanding weaving through the isolation, turning the town's vast quiet into something held, not hostile. From my side, the days took on color I'd forgotten, rhythms pulsing with life beyond duty. Shoveling stalls at dawn, the haze sharp scent mixing with Sophia's chamomile soap as she passed bales, each load lighter with her steady gaze on my back. The bed warm now, her body curving to mine under quilts mended by hands that knew my shape, breaths sinking in the dark like wind through shared branches. Loneliness faded, replaced by a fullness in the small acts, her sketching by lantern while I read seed catalogs, lines of us emerging on paper as vivid as the ridges at sunset. It wasn't escape, it was presence, the ranch's endless pull anchored by her, colors bleeding back into the gray I'd worn like dust. Sophia's reflections anchored deeper, her city restlessness settling into these roots. She'd traced the canyon's edge on walks, pencil idle now, saying how the vastness mirrored her, once adrift in concrete canyons, now grounded in this red earth hold. The sketches feel real here, she'd murmur, hand in mine over the overlook. Not just lines, but us, twisting through the stone. Her past denials echoed less, replaced by mornings hauling water to the garden we'd planted, dirt caking our knees, her laugh free when shoots broke soil. Authenticity bloomed slow, earned in the sweat of shared work. No fairy tale, but a freedom carved from choice. Vulnerabilities traded like tools in the barn. In the end, love felt like that. Earned, not given. A quiet freedom rising from the fractures. No grand rescues, just hands clasped over the canyon one dusk, fingers laced rough and sure. Silence speaking volumes as the sun dipped, painting walls in fire. The world stretched fast below, but held in our grip, doubt scattered like evening shadows. The canyon held us steady that night, vast yet ours. No regrets in the choice that cracked the world open. If quiet truths like this resonate, share your story below. Subscribe for more tales of finding home in the unexpected.